Places dry with sunny spells, the best of these further west. A few mist patches first thing too. The risk of a few light showers towards the coast of East Anglia tomorrow morning, otherwise a dry start with plenty of sunny spells. A fairly brisk northeasterly breeze continuing. A breezy start to Tuesday morning for southern England, which may blow in a few showers from the east, otherwise plenty of sunny spells to come for the day ahead. Staying dry for many as we head towards midday, sunny spells and just a few showers in the far east and southeast. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hey, welcome along. Happy Bank Holiday Monday to listeners and viewers in England, Wales, Northern Ireland, the Isle of Man, Jersey, Guernsey, but not Scotland. They don't need it in Nicola Sturgeon's socialist paradise because it's a bank holiday all year round. I'm glad to be here, almost didn't make it. My flight landed at Heathrow on time, but, and this was a new one on me, the lifts from arrivals to the car park weren't working. And there's no other way to get there. It's so easy, don't you find, to get the unfortunate impression that in Britain nothing works, that as part of our commitment to net zero, we've apparently left the developed world, not just the European Union. On tonight's Mark Steyn show, we'll explore the scale of the crisis with Kelvin McKenzie and David Starkey, and its resonances elsewhere with Ava Verladingerbroek. Oh, and another report. There she is, the Milk Maiden of Hilversum. What a delightful picture that is. Also, another report from the mean streets of broken Britain with John Wilding there. And, of course, the most important part of the show, that's you. Give it your best. You can email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at gbnews. A full hour of news and analysis coming your way after Polly Middlehurst with the latest headlines.
Mark, thank you. Good evening to you. Our top story tonight, NASA has postponed the launch of its new moon rocket over an issue with one of its engines. The uncrewed rocket is the world's most powerful to date and was due to propel a test capsule far from Earth into the moon's orbit. But engineers said an engine bleed couldn't be fixed and was the cause of the launch being called off today. Mission manager Michael Sarafin says NASA's not ready to give up and hopes to succeed with the takeoff on Friday. And he explained there were a number of reasons why they decided to postpone the launch today.
The combination of not being able to get the engine 3 chilled down and then the vent valve issue that they saw at the inner tank really caused us to pause today, and we felt like we needed a little more time. There was also a series of weather issues throughout the window. We would have been no-go for weather at the beginning of the window due to precipitation, and later on in the window we would have been no-go for lightning.
Well, here down on Earth, in the final week of campaigning in the Conservative leadership contest, Liz Truss's team says she favours targeted support to ease the cost of living crisis. However, the Tory leadership candidate says she's not ruling anything out and says it wouldn't be right to announce any plan before she'd seen full Whitehall analysis. In news away from home, residents living near Europe's biggest nuclear facility in Ukraine are being given iodine tablets amid fears of a nuclear incident. The authorities handed out the medication to both parents and children living close to the Zaporizhzhia power station amid intense fighting there. It's as a team from the International Atomic Energy Agency arrived in Ukraine to investigate a Russian-occupied facility, saying safety and security was paramount. Britain's biggest warship is limping back to port following a mechanical issue. HMS Prince of Wales left Portsmouth on Saturday. She was going to spend the next 3 months working with US military partners in the Atlantic. But the carrier is now moving slowly from the Isle of Wight, where she docked temporarily, towards Gosport, where it's understood the sheltered area there will make it easier for divers to examine the damage, which is believed to be to the propeller shaft. Some refuse collectors will continue to go on strike in Scotland as 2 unions rejected the latest offer from the local authorities. The offer was made to bin workers, which included a one-off payment of up to £2,000. That was rejected by both Unite and the GMB. One other union, though, is still in negotiations. Staff in Edinburgh and another number of other local administrations across Scotland have been staging industrial action over the last week in a dispute over pay. That's it. You're up to date on TV, online and on DA+ radio. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
Thank you, Polly. I'm not sure that the words "back down on Earth" are the words I would have used to introduce an item on the Tory leadership race. But we'll get to that in a moment. It's always interesting to see what the foreign press makes of your country. So from the Wall Street Journal: net zero emissions policy bankrupts Britain. Hang on a minute. I thought it was Vladimir Putin who was supposed to be bankrupting Britain. Isn't that what the Prime Minister said when he was talking to his constituents in Kiev?
And just as he fatally underestimated Ukraine, he also underestimated the price the world was willing to pay to support Ukraine. We have and we will. And even though we must accept that after 6 months of war, the price is indeed a high price. And I've come from the United Kingdom, where we're battling inflation that is being driven by the spike in energy prices that is caused by Putin's war. And we face strikes being driven by trade unions' bosses who have the ruinous belief that the best way to tackle soaring energy prices is with ever higher wages, when that is, of course, simply to pour petrol on the flames. And, of course, we're doing everything we can to deal with the pressures people face in their cost of living and to help people through the difficult months ahead. And that's why, given what's happening across the world, Volodymyr, it's so important for you to know now that we in Britain have the strength and the patience to get through these economic difficulties that have been so recklessly driven and exacerbated by the folly and malevolence of one man, Vladimir Putin.
So it is necessary for your granny to freeze to death in order that Putin will live in shame. Wait a minute, isn't that what I said 2 weeks before, Boris? Because in order to save the Maldives from being washed away in the 22nd century, the European Union has outsourced all its energy needs to the Kremlin. So in order to bring Russia to its knees, we have to bring you to your knees first. And that's environmentally friendly. So environmentally friendly. Good luck scraping together that $5.5 grand, but it's doing wonders for the planet. Just ask the Prime Minister. Indeed, since we started focusing attention on it, the so-called price cap has been going up £1,100. That's over 1,000 guineas every business day. A week ago, they were predicting £4,400. Look at that, 4,400. Woo, scary. Then it went up to 5,500. Wow, 5,500. And then 6,600. Yeah, look at that. So how'd it go over the weekend? Come on, you can guess. Altogether now, average bills predicted to rise to 7,700. Experts say. The same experts will be predicting 8,800 by the end of the show. But even 7,700 is quite a lot for a utilities bill. Average household income after tax is £31,400. So that's basically a quarter of your net income just on heating and lighting. That's if the energy companies are still in business. In Germany, where it has just hit €1,000 per megawatt hour. There's talk of energy companies going out of business, and so too in Austria. Look at this headline: Wien Energy in Finanznot. Vienna Energy, that's Austria's biggest energy company in what's Finanznot mean? That's a good German word. Ah, yes, it means financial distress. But don't you worry here. Vienna Energy has sought to reassure the markets by declaring, and this is a fantastic way to reassure the markets, just try it yourself. They've sought to reassure the markets by declaring that they're, quote, not bankrupt. They're just having a bit of difficulty finding any security to put up for the massive loans they need. They have to put up another 1.8 billion euros today, and the city of Vienna says it's tapped out. Okay, enough with five-figure utility bills and bankrupt energy suppliers. How bad is it really going to get? This is an item from the Scandinavian press. Finnish firm warns of toilet paper shortage as energy costs wipe out production. Is there nothing that Putin won't do? It turns out that even the manufacture of single-ply toilet paper requires affordable energy. The good news is that ending European consumption of toilet paper does wonders for the environment. We wouldn't be facing a crisis of itchy Eurobottoms if we'd done as the eminent popster Sheryl Crow advised the world a couple of years back and simply used one piece of toilet paper. Here's Sheryl Crow's view on toilet paper. An idea whose time has come. You'll be lucky to afford one sheet, as she puts it. I'm releasing a special all-star awareness-raising single. Me and Cheryl and Bob Geldof and Bono. All we are saying is give one piece a chance. You can, of course, recycle used toilet paper as Piers Morgan columns. I'm just kidding. Honestly, everyone's so touchy these days. In medieval Europe, there were sporadic outbreaks of choreomania. That's a plague of dancing. It was big in the 15th and 16th centuries. Afflicted various villages where suddenly the peasants, already beset by disease and famine, became seized by an uncontrollable urge to dance non-stop. It happened in Germany, the Netherlands, Belgium, France, Italy. Has it come to England and mutated with the Omicron variant? Or has the itchiness from lack of finished toilet paper now reached pandemic proportions? This was Notting Hill over the weekend, where the demented citizenry are now dancing on bus shelters in Ladbroke Grove. Yeah, it's all fun and games, but then the bus shelter collapsed. Look, there it goes. 4 people underneath narrowly avoided serious injury. A police horse is reported to have died suddenly, as the expression has it. So now dying suddenly has spread from human beings to the members of the equine community. We have no word on that horse's vaccination status. But the police didn't care. They were too busy dancing themselves. Here's one constable doing his bit, or actually having his bit done to him in a burlesque double act. Everything into it, and he's not really contributing there, is it? It's amazing. Even when doing a bump and grind routine, the Metropolitan Police prefer to stand around doing nothing, but they are good at that. Like the afflicted villages of 16th century Europe, the British Constabulary dance on in Derry. The police service of Northern Ireland decided to express their support of the Lincolnshire police, much criticised for dancing the Macarena last week, by dancing the Macarena themselves. The Royal Ulster Constabulary wouldn't have done that. The Royal Irish Constabulary wouldn't have done that. The Black and Tans could do a mean foxtrot. You could look it up. But on a small island riven by centuries of sectarian conflict, for the first time in generations, Loyalists and Republicans have finally found something they can agree on. The PSNI suck at dancing. Speaking of dancing, a week from now in the Tory party's somewhat miscast version of Cinderella, one of the 2 ugly sisters will get to go to the ball in place of Prince Charmless. But is the entire country, as that Wall Street Journal piece suggested, dancing on the precipice? Double-digit inflation, 5-figure energy bills, a national health service so thoroughly kaput that GPs are now demanding the newly widowed conduct their own post-mortems via Zoom call. Look at this headline from The Telegraph. Widow forced to verify husband's death on video call because GP would not visit. That's how bad it is now. They won't even make house calls if you're dead. Protect the National Health Service? What National Health Service? You want numbers? The IMF estimates that UK spending rose during lockdown by £400 billion. Almost all of it was borrowed. So that means an extra 6,000 quid of debt for every individual in the country. They borrowed £6,000 on your behalf and your kids' behalf and your grandkids' behalf just in order to total the economy. But you relax, because it'll be less than your New Year electric bill of $8,800. And anyway, on the net zero Titanic, they're rearranging the captain's table. Kelvin Mackenzie edited The Sun in its glory days. Are you excited about whoever it is will be going to Balmoral to kiss hands in a week's time?
No, I'm not excited. I think Liz Truss will be a disaster for the country. I think she's completely mad. The idea of cutting VAT, costing... By the way, if it's 10% cut, which is the latest thing, in that kind of bidding war which is taken over from in the energy world, if they do that, In 1 year alone, that will be 70-odd billion quid. Where's that coming from? And she wants to cut or increase the level at which you pay tax. Either she's going to cut one way or the other, another 30 billion. We are already firmly in the hole. As your piece indicated, 400 billion disappeared during COVID. Now they're saying, well, we're not skint enough. We aren't broke enough. We're going to do this. Why is she saying this? What is wrong with her? Look, Rishi has got a curse on him. He forced Boris out. So the Tories are not going to, the Tory heartlands are not going to forgive him for doing that. So he can't win, even although much of what he says seems to make some sense. I cannot, for the life of me, work out why people think what Truss is saying makes sense. These are ordinary people. They're facing big issues in their own life. And then they're coming along, a leader is coming along and saying, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We are going to borrow more money to make you feel better. For how long? 5 minutes? 5 seconds?
Well, wait, isn't there something liberating about being so broke? You get this sense in Washington where they've got officially a federal debt of $30 trillion, which no one has ever paid off in the history of mankind, and they're not figuring on paying it off. So if you owe 30 trillion, it's very easy to owe 40, 50, 60, 70 trillion. And having spent 400 billion just to close down the economy, in a sense, aren't people liberated from the facts of economic life now? What's it matter if you borrow 400 billion? What's the difference if you borrow 800 billion?
Right, OK, that might be an argument, right? America seems to believe in capitalism. It's a huge commercial enterprise, a massive country, 370 million. Over here, we are like 60-odd million, 65 million. We aren't big enough. We're not a reserve currency. The first thing that's going to happen when Truss gets elected is that the currency is going to collapse from it being pretty low right now. We'll be 1-to-1. We import 60% of our food. What does that mean? With the collapse of sterling, we are going to find that food is more expensive than it already is right now. You talk to anybody, any ordinary person, the first thing they'll tell you is, last week that tomato ketchup was £2. This time it's £2.50. These are serious, serious issues. I am not saying I have an answer, but I tell you what, I do know what one answer is from the electorate. 2 years from today, the Tories are going to be thrown out of office in a manner in which 97 will look like a great bonus for their party. They are going to be slaughtered in two important ways. The Lib Dems are going to take the South in a rather dangerous way. I have said to you before, I'm old enough to remember when Scotland was all Labour. Right. I can remember when the South was all Tory. That is going to change. The Red Wall is going to go back to Labour, and the Tories are going to be a small little party for a good few years, I'm afraid.
But from the country's point of view, won't that just mean I would love a repudiation of the insanity of the last 2.5 years, but a Labour government or a Labour Lib Dem coalition is just going to be all the insanity, even more so.
I totally agree. I absolutely agree. But if we had a Tory government that actually said, we are up shit creek, right, we're going to have to take the pain, it's going to be this, right? I think that is a message which will resonate slightly.
Right.
I agree with you. When Labour get in, if you think it's bad now, and you think it's bad in a year's time, forget it. It will be a total, complete catastrophe. And in some ways, Corbyn will be sitting there saying, well, I may not be in office, I might not even be in the Labour Party, but isn't this great?
Well, that would be quite something. I mean, we've had an absurdly long leadership contest. Everyone's sick of it. Ridiculous. Nobody wants it. I'd be in favour of, Australian-type spills, as they call them down in Canberra, where when you have a palace coup, it's all done and dusted in about 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, the new guy is taking his oath of allegiance to the Queen at whatever it's called, Yarralumla, and the whole thing's done. We've dragged it out here for 12 weeks, and And it's been an utterly trivial conversation as the nation has been sliding toward the cliff edge.
Yes, that is absolutely true. They thought it was a good way of getting everybody into the tent together. Turned out to be a disaster and will not happen again. But the real issue is, I think, for ordinary people, they don't want politics. They want us to know what can solve this. The answer is nothing can solve it. And we just have to try and get through it. Yes, we should hand out to the very poor and the rest of it. The idea that we have a Tory Chancellor saying that if you're on 45,000 a year, right? By the way, two 45,000s in a household, 90,000 pounds, you are going to get help as well. We haven't got enough money to help everybody. It is impossible, right? There has to be pain. So you end up going to Lorette de Mar for your holiday instead of going to Crete. Yeah, get real. That's it. Or you perhaps don't go on holiday at all. You've just got... These are events beyond the control of governments.
Saying, except you may not be going on holiday at all. There's talk that a third of the population... So we're talking whatever that is, 22.5 million people are going to be reduced to poverty. I mean, isn't that actually, it's not about a couple of weeks on a Greek island, it's about a threat to the social fabric, isn't it?
Well, when you say it is a lot of people, I totally agree. But the one stat that hasn't been included in this conversation is people aren't stupid. So what will they do? They will literally turn off things, right? And they will wear sweaters and they will have to make do and mend. People will do this, right? I'm not saying they're going to go from spending, tens of thousands down to fourpence. No, they will adjust themselves. People are quite clever enough to do that. So it won't be a case of 22 million. Yes, there might be 3 or 4 million, in which case we have to see them right.
OK. That's interesting. An optimistic take in the end from Kelvin McKenzie. Wear a sweater. Wear a sweater.
Yeah, two sweaters.
2 sweaters. That's, see, already the social divide is opening up between those who can only afford to wear 1 sweater and those who can afford to wear 2. It's all more complicated than it seems with these simplistic slogans. Let me know your thoughts. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Ava Valaardingerbroek and David Starkey are on deck to talk migrating in and migrating out. And the singer John Wilding is here. Don't touch that dial. We're coming right back.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh, my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
GB News is the people's channel, so let's channel what the people are saying. We wanted to know whether you were stockpiling for the winter months. A Twitter user says, booked my air ticket and accommodation in Thailand. So I intend to sit winter out on a Thai beach where the food is hot, the sea is warm, and the beer is cold. And the Thai ladies are lovely too, don't you find? Even if, whatever it is, 2/3 of them turn out to be lady boys or whatever. I'm just joking. I don't want to get a lot of complaints from the Thai embassy. Just a jest, honestly. Ellie says, can I ask somewhat naively why we might need to stockpile food? Why might we have a shortage? Well, oddly enough, that's because Farmer Bill Gates is buying up all the farmland for some mysterious reason we don't know. But basically, it means that the entire agricultural sector is going to be operating about as well as Windows 98 did. And also the government are trying to drive people out of farming. You can get paid by Her Majesty's government for giving up your farm. And so instead of being a functioning working farm, it can just be some abandoned pasture, which is far more environmentally friendly. Jilly Babe 48 says, I'm not succumbing to the fear which media perpetrated during COVID and lockdown, and now with bills. I am a pensioner. Not going to let fear kill me. I remember the 70s and 90s recessions, and we survived. You have to be a pensioner now to remember the recession in the 90s. God, I miss the old days when pensioners remembered, you know, the Great Depression in the 1930s. In the Netherlands, the migrants are flooding in such large numbers that they don't have enough little boys with fingers to put in the dike. Nor indeed facilities in which to house all these exciting new Dutchmen in waiting. There were so many that a bunch of them were forced to sleep outside, which the Dutch Prime Minister, Mark Rutte, says he's ashamed of. He finally figured it might be time to pause the deal with the EU that keeps the pipeline coming from Turkey. 86% of Dutch people would like a permanent end to these open doors, according to a new poll. But the PM says, oh, no, we can't do that without leaving the EU. And the downside of that would be, is it time for a Duxit or Nether-exit or Hollandsit? I'm not sure what to call it, but it seems like a good idea anyway. Ava Vlaardingerbroek, everyone's favourite Hilversum milkmaid, is back with us. Ava, this is actually a staggering issue. It's not in the least bit partisan. 86% of your countrymen want an end to this. Are they going to get an end to unwanted mass immigration?
I don't think that they are, because they didn't want this, you know, out of thin air. They've been wanting this since the 90s. There was a poll conducted in the 1990s where also a vast majority of the Dutch people said, actually it was 64%, we are in favor of very strict immigration regulations. And they also said, a majority, that it was the largest mistake in Dutch history to be made to let in great groups of people coming from different cultures. So this is not something new. The Dutch people have been saying this for decades, but obviously it hasn't happened. Fast forward to 2015, a migrant crisis, you know, the only thing that happened was more open borders, more people coming in. Now it is about 1,000 people a week that are coming in. And we obviously don't have any place to house these people because we are a very small country that is very densely populated. So the Dutch people are not being listened to. Like you heard our Prime Minister say, we need to exit the EU. We would have to have an exit in order for that to happen, which is obviously a total lie. This man doesn't care about the Dutch people's interest. He cares to cater to the globalists and to the immigrants and prioritize them over his own people.
This is really the biggest issue, not just in the Netherlands, but throughout most of the Western world, where highly developed, functioning societies that don't really need huge numbers of unskilled immigrants, and yet whoever you vote for, it doesn't make any difference. You can't put a stop to it. I remember talking to a couple of Dutch prime ministers back. His solution to it was that, and he actually had these advertisements made up where they show them these little commercials showing that in the Netherlands men kiss each other and there are prostitutes sitting in open windows, so that if you're uneasy about this, watch this video and then you won't be surprised by all the men kissing in the street. I mean, this is crazy stuff, Ava.
Yeah, I guess those migrants don't really care about feeling uneasy about men kissing in the street when they can intimidate them and when they still get their social benefits. Whereas the, native people in the Netherlands are facing energy bills, like you just talked with your previous guest about, that apparently they just are going to have to wear sweaters or something in order to stay warm, which obviously is a lie. They don't have to wear sweaters because the energy crisis is going out of control because of some sort of natural disaster. It's precisely because of this, because of these policies that prioritize other people, and the native Dutch population is quite literally paying the price for it, and they have been for decades. It is just a matter of choice once again.
You mentioned the decades this has been going on. Something has changed. In Germany, as we mentioned earlier, it's now up to €1,000 per kilowatt hour. That's the cost of energy in the German state. Will continentals continue to be to tolerate this mass immigration when they themselves are having to be downsized, and the French president is saying that the age of abundance is over?
Well, it's being shoved down their throat because Chancellor Scholz actually yesterday spoke about the European Union needing more rights. So he wants to get rid of vetoes when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to taxes, for example. So what it seems like is that the power of these institutions that all our leaders hide behind, which obviously is a lie when you look at a country like Hungary that has been perfectly able to protect its borders, they are just going to continue to fasten a grip on the Dutch population. And the fact that our prime minister said that, he said, oh, we can't stop immigration because of the fact that we are part of the EU. Well, then get out of the EU. Let's do that Nexit. And second of all, maybe you should stop lying. And let's look at Hungary that has been able to keep all of these immigrants out perfectly fine, Premier Rutte.
Yes, it's certainly true. I was in Budapest just a couple of months ago, and it was actually like going to Amsterdam or Rotterdam a few decades ago. It was a very different kind of European country, and one that in the western half of the continent exists only in memory now. Thank you, Ava. We're going to run you for Prime Minister in the next Dutch election. Unwanted immigration isn't just a Dutch thing. It was one of the key reasons Britons voted for Brexit. And it's still a critical fault line in most Western countries, not between political parties, but as we've been talking about, between the people and the political class. The people vote to constrain immigration and nothing happens. The left is openly in favour of, quote, open borders. The right professes not to be, but does nothing about it. The usual line on immigrants is the American one, oh, well, we're a nation of immigrants. It isn't really true, even in the US, never mind in Canada or Australia, which until fairly recently saw themselves as the British settler nations in North America and the Pacific. But I see it's now being applied to the mother country. The British Isles, apparently, have always been a nation of immigrants. The eminent historian David Starkey joins me. David.
Hello, Mark.
What is going on?
This is not for your comfort, you know. I feel really, rather than wearing a suit, I should have come in sackcloth and ashes, you know, with the mark of the beast upon me.
Well, I thought we'd get you to confirm the truth of this aphorism that Britain has always been a nation of immigrants, by which I think factually it means there were 27 Huguenots a few centuries, including the forebears of Nigel Farage, I believe. But other than that, you're stretching this whole nation of immigrants.
The quote that people always use, if we're really going to try and pin it down historically, is Daniel Defoe at the beginning of the 18th century, who talks about us as a mongrel nation because we are British, Roman, Danish, Anglo-Saxon, that extraordinary melding which takes place in the so-called Dark Ages. That's true. But the modern view of historians now is, although there were waves of immigrants, there was a Norman conquest, there was a Roman conquest, there was an Anglo-Saxon conquest, there was a Danish conquest. Probably, even in the case of the Anglo-Saxons, relatively small numbers were involved. And then, from that point onwards, you produce a remarkably stable society right through the Middle Ages into the early modern period. There are indeed waves. The thing that characterises most of the waves is they're extraordinarily skilled. If you were talking about unskilled and skilled, if you look, they were still unpopular, don't doubt it. But if you look in the 16th century, there are the refugees from the Netherlands. They are keys in the development of East Anglia, of the so-called New Draperism, whatever. Then there are the French Huguenots, the most sophisticated, able population of bankers, of craftsmen, of silversmiths, of architects, designers, the cream of France, and then the very different immigrations, Irish in the 19th century, to build the railways. Enormous influx of labour. No, huge numbers.
Yeah, but I wouldn't call the Irish, that's internal settlement within the United Kingdom.
In many ways, it changes things more than any other immigration. If you look at the very different political character of both Glasgow and Liverpool, that is the result of that. If we're talking about the impact of immigration, no, but we need to be honest and frank about these things.
Being honest, and in fact, I'm looking at it from an Irish point of view. That if you just take, English, Scottish, Irish, Welsh, you can make the argument that that's enough diversity for anyone, given some of the consequences of it.
On the other hand, you see, you can argue, and I would argue, that one of the reasons why we have actually coped rather well, generally, with immigration is precisely because there was never a British nation. Despite the union of England and Scotland in the 18th century, we never really called ourselves Britons. There was always a sense you were English or Scots. British was for export. Back home, there were the different identities. And I think that essentially we're not really, although we boast of it, and Nigel Farage has made his entire career out of it, we are not a nation state. We are a monarchy. You owe loyalty not to the nation, but to the monarch. And this, in many ways, has helped smooth this extraordinary change. Right, the change. Let's now be quite clear about the extent of the change. Do you know what the number of people with an origin in the EU who have decided permanently to settle here is? They had to choose, of course, once we left the EU. Do you know what the number is?
No, what's the...
6 million.
6 million.
It is 1/10 of the entire population. Now, that is on a scale that we have never, ever experienced before. It is as simple as that. It is totally novel.
So you're talking about places like Kensington and Chelsea, which is now one of the biggest French metropolitan areas outside France.
The French, I don't think it was particularly the French element that expounds vastly. I hadn't noticed the impoverished on Kensington High Street, those well-known food banks at the corner of Kensington Church. I must be blind when I walk past them. Now, I'm thinking really of the Eastern European immigration.
The Polish plumbers.
And agricultural workers and the extraordinary transformation of places like Peterborough and whatever. But 6 million. Now, that's genuinely extraordinary. And, of course, there is then the recurrent immigration because of marital rights. So, for example, the Bangladeshi and particularly the Pakistani communities constantly replenish themselves each generation by marrying back home. So there are all of these things. So
Well, just on that point, because you said something rather interesting.
I always do. Yes.
Well, yes, but this one was interesting and personal, because you said that your parents had come from Oldham, which is certainly, if you watch this show, is principally a town that we now associate with huge numbers of young English working class girls, preyed on by a particular community that no politician actually wants to talk about. Now, these were things where people originally came over to work in the mills, and then they became nurses and bus drivers and all kinds of...
Almost entirely taxi drivers.
Yes.
The percentage of the male population of the group that you describe with taxi drivers is completely extraordinary. In other words, a permanently non-skilled section of the population, with of course perpetually rendered re-foreign, re-non-native by this fact of constant marriage back home. And indeed, there's a very impressive recent study of this and the whole sense of the alienation and the difference of this group, which argues that cousin marriage, first cousin marriage, should be banned, and that's the only way that you can deal with it. Now,
but is it feasible? I mean, in Bradford, I gather that it's something like 57% of the Pakistani community are married to their first cousins.
Precisely.
And in many cases, those first cousins are themselves children of first cousins.
With the constant intensification of hereditary illness and diseases and so on. It's a profound issue. But of course, it also leads to a wildly different social structure, a non-individualistic, a clan-based social structure, which is hostile to notions of individual responsibility, to individual, the fact that the democratic citizen is supposed to be an individual, not a member of a group. You vote as an individual, not as a family. So there's that. Now, that's, I think, an extreme example of very problematic immigration. On the other hand, can I just throw a different sort of spanner in the works, very much arguing against Kelvin Mackenzie's position earlier on. You too, which is why I suggested sackcloth and ashes, you were presenting Britain as having unique problems. This is simply not true. This is not true. The most interesting testimony to the fact is every year, and there's a fascinating article in the Daily Telegraph, which I think we can still see not exactly as the Manchester Guardian on these issues, pointing out that 1 million visas are issued to Britain, of whom about 300,000 are people wanting to come and work here, 400,000 are people coming to study here, 200 are resettlement like Hong Kong Chinese and whatever. Now, the fact you have that immigration, and it's skilled immigration. I mean, the one thing that Boris did was to introduce this quasi-point system, you know, roughly modelled on the Australian, that you have to earn a particular level of income before you're allowed to come here. Now, this suggests a very interesting vote of confidence, and I am not for 1 second saying that I don't think massive things are wrong. I'm not for 1 second saying I don't think immigration has played a part in it. The most obvious thing that we have not done, if we've had 6 million people coming into the country, isn't it astonishing that we've got a smaller housing crisis as we've got? Isn't it astonishing that our NHS hasn't completely collapsed? You've deliberately willed this huge, and Blair undoubtedly willed it, this huge increase of population, and we have never seriously explored the consequences. We've never considered what we should do about it. We've never considered, should local authorities be prioritised, you know, according to the levels of immigration, all of these things. So we've let it happen in a very characteristically British fashion. We've sort of muddled through. It hasn't been too terrible, but...
But, you know, in somewhere like Oldham, you see the limits of muddling through.
It is appalling. It's appalling.
And that at some point is going to become, and for all the point systems that they have in Australia and Canada and so forth, when you have all this chain migration, so that the person with all the great points comes in, but then his unskilled second cousin and his unskilled great aunt and all the rest then follow. That can defeat the point. We're testing this thesis in
I would
a way,
agree,
and it will have consequences.
And also, I think we need to do something else. We need to abandon formally the model of multiculturalism, the notion that all cultures are equal. What I would like to see instead is a model of biculturalism. I mean, the most successful immigrants, be it Jews, be it Hindu, be it Chinese, preserve their own culture completely and yet are full working members of... I said we shouldn't talk about nation, but if we want to talk, and if indeed there is a thing called British culture, they're fully part of it.
Well, yeah, that's true in the sense that Britain was in some ways the first multicultural.
Stop using multicultural.
But there are middle-aged Australians who remember that their first passports in the 1960s said, bore on the front of it, British Passport Australia. Thank you, David. It's always a pleasure, and particularly when you take issue with me and Kelvin. So we'll have a panel and fisticuffs next time. When we come back, further thoughts on not so broken Britain as David sees it. Also, Stump the Steyn looms. GB Views at gbnews.uk. All coming up.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
To reprise my old line, Britain is the land where everything is policed except crime. As you'll know if you saw our dancing plods from the Met and the Northern Ireland coppers in support of the Lincolnshire Constabulary a little earlier. While the peelers are pirouetting, the predators move inward from the dark, feral fringes of society to the glittering thoroughfares of global Britain. My next guest is a singer. He was walking home in Soho earlier this month along Old Compton Street, the main drag in Soho, when two men beat him up. Take a look at this. John Wilding was left with a fractured nose, swollen temples, two black eyes, and no watch, the watch he'd received as a 21st birthday present. Well, the police at least swung by the crime scene. They don't very often these days. The message is clear. The perpetrators will not be brought to justice, and John won't be getting his watch back. As a statistical matter, crime does pay. 98.7% of reported crime doesn't even lead to a charge or a summons. John Wilding is here and looking in fabulous shape after you went through. But the violence just descends out of nowhere. Did it come as a terrible shock to you?
It did. I was walking home from the same bar I go to all the time, and it came from the left, punched me out of nowhere. Luckily, I managed to kind of find my feet and got a swing back.
Really?
I did, yeah. But after being on the night out, you know, it kept coming, and so I fell to the floor. I think for me as well, had there been an approach of give me the watch, you know, I would have rather just taken it off and given it to him. But there wasn't that. So the whole time that this is going on, I'm confused and dazed as to why. And it wasn't until the very end, where I was on the floor, that he grabbed my wrist and swiped it off.
This is in central London, where there are CCTV cameras virtually on every lamppost. Are you surprised the police really have no idea about this?
Well, I actually have to say the police in my case have been very good. They were there in 10 minutes of me of calling them. I've had 3 follow-up phone conversations. They called me on Friday to see how I was doing and how I was healing and give me an update on everything. It is difficult in a sense of trying to find these perpetrators that do this. I've been told that once a crime like this has been committed in a certain area, that person is then moved to a different area to avoid being detected or kind of seen again.
So the guys who attacked you will have been moved to Euston or Lambeth or whatever?
Potentially, to avoid the same thing happening again in the same area, or potentially being recognised in the same area by the people that they've done this to.
If they know that, then they think that it's not just a random attack on you for your watch. It's part of a citywide organisation.
Absolutely. I think, you know, the bigger conversation here is, you know, why are people having to resort to this extreme violence for a watch? And I think, you know, with inflation hitting 18% by the end of the year, the energy cap having to have going up by 80%, I think there's not one avenue to tackle this. There's 15 different avenues, and I think people have to start looking at the cost of living and the fact that people are struggling, and violence is never the answer. But there is bigger questions to be answered for.
Well, if it is tied to the cost of living, and as we came in with these predictions of £7,700 electric bills for the new year, if you're correct, that means there's going to be a lot more violence on the street, and I don't know where you're going to have to go. You can go to the most expensive street in Mayfair, and it's going to you can be strolling past all the big car dealerships in Berkeley Square, and you can be strolling past the Ritz, and this is going to happen. Thank you very much, John. Take care in Soho.
Thank you very much.
Take care in Knightsbridge and Chelsea and all the rest. Let's stump it out. We'll just have a couple of quick questions. Sir Digby says, how can the police do a Tommy Cooper and say, just like that, and pull 170 criminals out of a hat after the Liverpool shooting, sat twiddling their thumbs just watching these 170 criminals until recent events? I think that's the Claude Rains in Casablanca, round up the usual suspects. There's a bit of a whiff of that about it. Carl says, how do you take your tea? I'm a bit of a Nancy boy on that. I do it in the continental style, thé au citron. I like the tea with I like Darjeeling with just a slice of lemon. And now people all over the country are switching off in disgust. Dan Wooden is here to macerate your Monday. What you got, Dan?
Mark, do you want to know something weird, Mark?
What's that?
So I like my tea with cream. not milk with cream.
Oh, no, that kills. That's awful. That just kills. You can't do that. You can't do that to Darjeeling or Earl Grey.
So weirdly, as if I am a total freak. And obviously I am. But look, Mark, I want to tell you about a brilliant story we've got today, because I know you'll be really interested in this. Two British heroes living in Canada, both unvaccinated, decide to take Justin Trudeau's administration to court over their despicable vaccine mandates. The information that they have procured as a result exposes the Trudeau government, proves that he's only doing this for political reasons and not scientific reasons. So they are here, two great Brits, freedom fighters, Sean Rickard and Carl Harrison, live in Uncancelled before the end of the show.
Yeah, fantastic. And someone has to stick it to him, and they should go all the way to the Supreme Court and kick his butt. That's all coming up with Dan after the weather. Stay safe, stay free.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking like a largely dry and bright day with plenty of sunny spells. Let's take a look at the details. Northern Scotland will start on a rather cloudy note with perhaps an isolated shower. A few glimmers of sunshine will develop as the morning progresses. Temperatures will be around 11 Celsius. A dry and largely bright start across Northern Ireland, with any mist or fog patches quickly clearing. Sunny spells and light winds for all.